You say it's just a discussion, but for you, it never is. Some people experience every disagreement like a moral battle. You might be one of them, and you probably don't even notice it's happening. It starts small, a comment, a joke, someone disagreeing with you, and something shifts. Your body tightens, your tone changes, you lean forward. Because now, it's not about the topic, it's about being right. It's about proving something. And if you're honest, you don't want understanding, you want victory. You don't even choose to escalate it. It just happens. Like your nervous system heard a threat no one else did. And suddenly, a normal conversation feels like a battlefield. Not a debate, a moral one. Why does that happen? Because here's what most people misunderstand. For some people, arguments don't feel intellectual. They feel physical. Their heart rate changes. Their breathing shifts. Their muscles tense. Not because they're dramatic, but because their nervous system reads disagreement as danger. And danger doesn't ask for permission. It reacts. Now here's the part that goes deeper. You don't randomly develop that reaction. You learn it. Sometimes quietly, sometimes early. If you grew up in a home where being unheard felt normal, where fairness was unpredictable, where voices got loud, where silence meant losing, your body adapted. It decided something very simple. Don't stay neutral, don't back down, don't let things slide. Because sliding once felt like disappearing. And maybe you swore you'd never let that happen again. The problem is, the threat isn't there anymore. But your body doesn't know that. So when someone challenges your view today, your body isn't reacting to the logic. It's reacting to an old pattern. And that's why the intensity feels automatic. Not chosen, automatic. It rarely starts with something important. It starts with something ordinary. Someone says, "I don't think that's a big deal," and you feel it immediately. You say, "Well, actually, it kind of is." The tone shifts. They roll their eyes. You lean forward. And suddenly, you're not discussing the topic anymore. You're defending something. It could be politics. It could be parenting. It could be how someone treats a waiter. It doesn't matter. What matters is the feeling underneath. Because to you, it's not just an opinion. It's a line. And someone just crossed it. Now add one more layer. We don't argue in isolation anymore. We argue in public. On timelines, in comment sections, in feeds that never sleep. And online, intensity gets rewarded. Outrage spreads faster than nuance. Certainty gets attention. Bold takes get shared. But hesitation, doubt, I might be wrong, that rarely goes viral. So when someone disagrees with you online, it's not just a conversation, it's a performance. There's an audience. The louder the conviction, the stronger the response. Not because it's true, but because it triggers people. And once you've felt that rush, that hit of agreement, that flood of validation, it reinforces the pattern. Let's be honest, that feels good. Not because it's thoughtful, but because it feels like you're winning. And winning feels safer than being uncertain. Now, it's not just your nervous system reacting. It's a system around you rewarding escalation. So, a small disagreement doesn't just feel personal. and suddenly it feels bigger than it probably is, like the whole room is watching. And that's when standing down feels weaker than doubling down. Here's where it becomes even more complicated. For some people, ideas are flexible. They can disagree, adjust, move on. For others, ideas aren't just thoughts. They're identity. They're values. They're part of who you are. So when someone challenges the idea, it doesn't feel like discussion. It feels like attack. Not on the argument, on you. And once it feels personal, you stop listening. You're not debating anymore. You're defending your image. And once identity enters the room, conversation changes. It's no longer about truth. It's about protection. And certainty feels powerful. I've caught myself doing this before, calling it principle when it was really pride. And pride hates being wrong, especially in front of other people. It feels grounded, clear, righteous. But certainty also does something dangerous. It leaves no oxygen. It leaves very room for nuance or doubt. Because if the idea bends, then maybe you bend. And that's the part that feels threatening. There's a cost to this, and it's rarely immediate. At first, it feels powerful. You walk away thinking, I stood my ground. You feel principled. But over time, people start to hesitate. They choose silence instead of debate. They avoid certain topics around you. They stop pushing back. Not because they agree, but because it's exhausting. Not exhausting because you're wrong, exhausting because you're intense. Intensity without awareness is overwhelming. Some of the most morally intense people I've met don't realize how intimidating they can be. Not because they're cruel, but because they're certain. And conviction, when mixed with fear, is loud. Sometimes louder than it needs to be. It interrupts. It escalates. It dominates. And sometimes it walks away believing it won something important, even if it just lost a relationship. That's the paradox. The same intensity that makes someone loyal makes them unbearable in conflict. Maybe the real difference isn't who's right. Maybe it's who can tolerate disagreement without turning it into a test of identity. Because not every challenge is disrespect. Not every disagreement is betrayal. And not every argument is a moral war. Some people can sit in tension without escalating it. Others can't. Not because they're bad, not because they don't care, but because somewhere along the way their system learned that standing down meant disappearing. And most of the time, they don't even realize that's what's happening. Sometimes it wasn't about the topic. It was about who you felt you had to be in that moment. And that's harder to admit than simply being wrong.